Prince Harry has long been the subject of persistent paternity rumors, with tabloids speculating that he is not King Charles III's biological son. These claims, fueled by comparisons to James Hewitt, have caused emotional turmoil for Harry and cast a shadow over Princess Diana's legacy. Despite the media frenzy, the royal family remains silent, deepening Harry's frustration. This video explores how these rumors shaped his relationship with the monarchy, his decision to take a DNA test, and his path toward independence. The royal family's silence. Despite the growing speculation, the royal family chose to remain silent, refusing to publicly address the paternity rumors surrounding Prince Harry. For years, the whispers of illegitimacy spread like wildfire through tabloids and social circles, yet Buckingham Palace never issued a statement to dispel them. To Harry, this silence was more than just a public relations strategy. It was a personal betrayal. It reinforced his belief that the monarchy prioritized its own image over the well-being of its members, even when it came to protecting the legacy of a beloved figure like his mother, Princess Diana. Harry had already witnessed how the institution failed his mother during her turbulent years within the royal family. The late princess had often spoken about feeling unsupported, particularly during her failing marriage to Prince Charles in the 1980s and early 1990s. The same pattern seemed to repeat itself with Harry. The palace's refusal to address the paternity rumors sent a clear message. Preserving the monarchy's pristine public image was more important than shielding him from deeply personal attacks. What hurt most was that these rumors not only targeted Harry but also tarnished Diana's memory, suggesting that she had been unfaithful in such a way, with consequences that extended to the legitimacy of her own son, was deeply demeaning. Harry believed that defending her honor should have been a priority for the family. Instead, they ignored the whispers, allowing them to fester and gain traction over the years. This inaction contributed to the growing divide between Harry and the rest of the royal family. He began to see their silence as an intentional omission, a calculated decision to let the press have its way rather than risk getting involved. This realization would later shape many of the choices he made about his future, pushing him further away from the monarchy that he once felt obligated to serve. Parallel to Diana's struggles. For Harry, the paternity rumors were not just about him. They were a painful reminder of how his mother had been treated by both the press and the royal family. Diana, the people's princess, had spent much of her life fighting against an institution that refused to support her in times of crisis. From the moment she married into the royal family in the early 1980s, she struggled with the lack of emotional warmth and genuine care within the monarchy. Her highly publicized divorce from Prince Charles in the mid-1990s only further exposed the cracks within the institution. She was relentlessly pursued by the media, every aspect of her life dissected for public consumption. When she expressed distress over how the press treated her, the royal family largely dismissed her concerns. They expected her to endure the scrutiny in silence, much like they had done for generations. But Diana was not one to suffer in quiet compliance. She fought back, using her voice to bring attention to issues like mental health and the emotional toll of royal life. Harry saw himself in those struggles. As the paternity rumors swirled, he realized that he was facing the same lack of support that his mother had endured decades earlier. The institution that was supposed to protect its own had failed him, just as it had failed her. The royal family's inaction reminded him of how they had ignored Diana's cries for help when she was alive, refusing to intervene even when she was at her most vulnerable. Harry's growing disillusionment with the monarchy was not just about his own experience. It was about history repeating itself. He saw how Diana had been left to fend for herself, and he knew that if he remained within the institution, he would be expected to do the same. The painful parallels between his life and his mother's reinforced his belief that change was necessary. He would not allow himself to be trapped in the same cycle of neglect and silence that had ultimately contributed to Diana's tragic fate in 1997. How the media's role are involved. The role of the media in fueling the paternity rumors cannot be overstated. From the late 1990s into the early 21st century, the British tabloids thrived on sensationalism, and Prince Harry's alleged illegitimacy was the perfect scandal. Gossip columns, front-page stories, and even so-called investigative reports dissected every detail of Harry's appearance, comparing his features to those of James Hewitt. They pointed out the red hair, the similar facial structure, and even speculative timelines that supposedly aligned with Diana's alleged affair. Despite the lack of any concrete evidence, these rumors refused to die. The more the royal family remained silent, the more the press continued to speculate. To Harry, this silence felt like an endorsement of the stories, as if the palace's refusal to deny them gave the tabloids permission to keep spreading their fabricated narratives. The monarchy had the power to issue a clear statement putting an end to the rumors, but they never did. Harry also recognized how the media's relentless pursuit of salacious stories had contributed to his mother's struggles. Diana's every move had been scrutinized, her personal life invaded, and her emotional well-being disregarded for the sake of tabloid sales. She had died in a tragic car crash in Paris in 1997, chased by paparazzi desperate for one last photograph. Harry could not ignore the parallels between how the press treated her and how they now treated him. The exploitation of his personal life was yet another reason for Harry's growing distrust of both the media and the royal family. He began to see the monarchy's refusal to intervene as part of a larger pattern, one where the institution valued public perception over the well-being of its members. The media's role in this entire ordeal only strengthened Harry's determination to take control of his own narrative, rather than let the press define him through scandalous and unfounded rumors. Feeling betrayed by the institution. As the years passed and the paternity rumors persisted, Harry began to feel deeply betrayed by the institution he was born into. The monarchy, an institution that prided itself on stability and tradition, had long projected an image of unity and control. But behind the grand palaces and carefully crafted public statements, there was a growing sense of emotional neglect that Harry could no longer ignore. The royal family's refusal to defend him felt like a deliberate choice, one that revealed their true priorities. He had witnessed firsthand how they operated, how they carefully managed crises to protect the institution, even at the expense of individuals within it. This realization stung, even more because it was not just about him, it was about his mother too. Diana had experienced the same indifference when she struggled with her failing marriage in the late 1980s. When she openly spoke about her battles with mental health, she was met with cold silence from the palace. And now, decades later, Harry was facing a similar battle. He began to understand that, in the eyes of the monarchy, individuals were secondary to the institution itself. The survival of the royal brand mattered more than the happiness or well-being of its members. Even as the tabloids tore into his life, questioning his very identity, the palace refused to step in and put an end to the speculation. This left Harry feeling abandoned, as though he was being sacrificed to maintain the monarchy's carefully curated image. This sense of betrayal planted the seeds of doubt in Harry's mind. He started questioning his role within the institution and whether he truly belonged there. If his own family could remain silent while his name was dragged through the mud, what else were they willing to ignore? This period of deep reflection would later play a crucial role in his decision to step back from royal duties and carve out a new path for himself, away from the constraints of the monarchy. Decision to take a DNA test. With the rumors continuing to circulate unchecked and the royal family refusing to address them, Harry decided to take matters into his own hands. If the institution would not stand up for him, then he would seek the truth himself. By the early 2020s, he had made up his mind. He would take a DNA test to settle the question of his paternity once and for all. This was not a decision he made lightly. For years, he had tried to ignore the rumors, hoping they would fade away. But they never did. Instead, they lingered in the public consciousness, resurfacing every few years whenever a new tabloid decided to dredge them up. The idea that his father might not be King Charles III was not just hurtful, it was destabilizing. His entire identity, his place in history, and his connection to the monarchy were all being called into question. He needed clarity, not just for the public, but for himself. When King Charles III and Prince William learned of his decision, they were deeply unsettled. Both feared that such a test would only fuel further speculation. If the results were leaked or misinterpreted, it could create an even bigger scandal, one that the royal family would struggle to contain. Charles, in particular, was reportedly hurt by the implications of Harry's choice. To him, it felt like a sign that his son doubted their bond, that he was willing to entertain the idea that they were not truly father and son. But for Harry, this was not about hurting his father, it was about taking control of his own narrative. He had spent his life being defined by rumors, by the media's version of his story. Now he wanted to take ownership of the truth. Meghan, ever the supportive partner, encouraged him to follow his instincts. She reminded him that his mental well-being was the priority and that he deserved to put these doubts to rest. Determined to keep the process as private as possible, Harry arranged for the test to be conducted in a confidential clinic in California. He took every precaution to ensure that the results would not be leaked before he was ready. As he waited for the outcome, he was filled with anxiety. What if the results confirmed the rumors? What would that mean for his identity, his place in the family, and his mother's legacy? The next few days would prove to be some of the most emotionally intense of his life. Meghan's support? As Prince Harry grappled with the overwhelming emotions surrounding his decision to take a DNA test, he found unwavering support in Meghan. She had witnessed firsthand how deeply the rumors affected him, how they chipped away at his sense of identity, and how they served as a constant reminder of the media's ruthless intrusion into his life. For Meghan, standing by Harry during this time was not just about being a supportive spouse. It was about reinforcing the idea that he did not have to face this battle alone. From the very beginning, Meghan understood the weight of what Harry was carrying. The uncertainty, the unanswered questions, and the deep wounds left by a lifetime of speculation were not just tabloid gossip to him. They were a reflection of the larger issue, his ongoing struggle with the royal family's unwillingness to protect its own. The silence from the palace had made him feel isolated for years, but Meghan made sure he never felt alone in this. She constantly reminded him that his well-being mattered more than the monarchy's reputation, that his peace of mind was worth pursuing, no matter what the outcome of the test would be. During the waiting period, Harry was plagued with anxiety. He knew that if the test confirmed the rumors, it would alter his entire perception of himself. The family he thought he belonged to, the history he was tied to, and the lineage that had defined his life, all of it could be questioned with a single result. Meghan, however, helped him stay grounded. She reassured him that his worth was not defined by bloodlines, titles, or palace walls. She reminded him that no matter the outcome, he had already built a family of his own, one rooted in love, respect, and mutual support. Her presence during those days of waiting gave Harry the strength he needed to face whatever truth was coming. And no matter what the test revealed, Meghan made sure he knew that he would never have to carry the burden of uncertainty alone again. DNA test results. The day finally arrived when the results of Prince Harry's DNA test were ready. The weight of the moment was almost unbearable. Every scenario had played out in his mind. Every possibility had been considered, but nothing could prepare him for the reality of seeing it in black and white. With Meghan by his side, he opened the envelope, his heart pounding in his chest. The results confirmed what he had always been told. King Charles III was indeed his biological father. A flood of emotions surged through him. There was relief, of course, relief that the rumors had been nothing more than baseless speculation, that his entire identity had not been built on a lie. But there was also frustration and sadness. Why had it taken this long to reach this conclusion? Why had the palace not taken action decades ago to shut these rumors down? Why had he been forced to go through this alone, without the family that should have stood by him? The confirmation was bittersweet. On one hand, it gave him the clarity he needed, putting an end to the whispers that had followed him since childhood. On the other hand, it reinforced how little the royal family had done to protect him. This test should never have been necessary. The fact that he had felt compelled to take it spoke volumes about the failures of the institution he had once served. Beyond his own emotions, Harry felt a strong sense of vindication for his mother. Princess Diana had been painted unfairly by the media, accused of infidelity that never resulted in an illegitimate child. This result, if anything, was a testament to her integrity. It was a way of clearing her name, of proving that the rumors had not just been an attack on him, but on her as well. With the truth now undeniable, Harry was left with one lingering question. If the monarchy had the power to end this speculation decades ago, why did they choose to remain silent? Impact on family relationships. While the DNA test put an end to the rumors, it did little to mend the fractures within the royal family. If anything, it deepened the existing rifts, exposing the emotional distance that had grown between Harry and his relatives over the years. The fact that he had even felt the need to take a DNA test was, in itself, a sign of how much trust had eroded between him and the institution. King Charles III, despite being relieved by the results, was deeply hurt that Harry had doubted their bond enough to seek verification. To him, this was more than just a test. It was an indication of how far their relationship had deteriorated. Charles had spent years trying to maintain the image of a steady, unified monarchy, and Harry's actions suggested that his own son had lost faith in that very foundation. Prince William, too, struggled with the fallout. As the heir to the throne, he had always been more aligned with the institution, valuing duty above personal grievances. He saw the DNA test as an unnecessary step, one that had the potential to stir up more controversy rather than settle it. To him, Harry's decision to go through with it felt like yet another break from the family's traditional way of handling issues. Behind closed doors, away from public scrutiny. For Harry, however, the test was never about hurting his father or his brother. It was about finding peace. But the royal family's reaction to his decision made one thing clear. They viewed this as an act of defiance rather than an act of self-preservation. Their concern was not the emotional toll it had taken on him over the years, but rather the optics of it all. This reinforced what Harry had already begun to accept, that he and the royal family were moving in entirely different directions. Their priorities were rooted in tradition and duty, while his were focused on personal well-being and truth. The more he tried to find his own path, the more it became evident that his place in the monarchy had always been conditional. The test had given him answers, but it had also revealed something much deeper. His bond with his family was far more fragile than he had ever realized. Decision to leave the royal family. The DNA test had provided answers, but it also confirmed something far more unsettling for Prince Harry. The monarchy was not a place where he could truly thrive. For years, he had wrestled with his role within the institution, feeling increasingly suffocated by the rigid expectations, the media scrutiny, and, most painfully, the lack of emotional support from his own family. The paternity rumors were just one of many issues that had been left to fester, unaddressed, as though his well-being was of no concern to the people who were supposed to protect him. This was not just about a test result. It was about a lifetime of feeling like an outsider within his own family. His mother had fought for autonomy within the royal system, only to be cast aside and left vulnerable to the relentless press. Harry saw himself walking the same path, and he knew how that story ended. Diana's life had been defined by the pressures of the monarchy, and in the end, it had contributed to her tragic death in 1997. Harry could not allow history to repeat itself. Not for him, and certainly not for his wife and children. Meghan had already endured immense hostility from both the media and elements within the royal household. The constant scrutiny, the racial undertones in press coverage, and the lack of intervention from the palace all served as warning signs. If they stayed, They would be sacrificing their happiness for an institution that had repeatedly shown its indifference to their struggles. The decision to step back from royal duties was not about abandoning his responsibilities. It was about self-preservation. In early 2020, Harry and Meghan announced their plan to step away from their roles as senior royals. The backlash was immediate, but for the first time in his life, Harry felt like he was making a decision for himself, not for the monarchy. It was time to reclaim his future. Diana's enduring influence. Through every challenge Harry faced, whether it was the paternity rumors, the royal family's silence, or his eventual departure from the monarchy, one presence remained constant in his heart: his mother, Princess Diana. Even in death, she was his guiding force, shaping the way he viewed the world and the choices he made. Her legacy was not just something he cherished, it was something he felt responsible for protecting. Diana had been more than just a princess. She had been a mother who loved her children fiercely. Harry often reflected on the warmth she brought to his life, the small moments of kindness that made him feel truly seen and valued. Unlike the rigid formality of the monarchy, Diana had nurtured an environment where love and authenticity mattered more than duty and tradition. She had fought to give her sons a sense of normalcy, taking them to amusement parks, fast food restaurants, and even homeless shelters, experiences that grounded them beyond palace walls. But Diana's life had also been marked by immense pain. She had been hounded by the press, manipulated by the very institution she served, and ultimately left to navigate the royal world on her own. Her struggles were no secret. She had openly spoken about her battles with depression, bulimia, and loneliness. Harry saw in her a tragic example of what happened when the monarchy failed to protect its own. He refused to let the same fate befall his wife and children. Leaving the royal family was, in many ways, an act of honoring Diana. It was his way of breaking free from the toxic cycle that had claimed his mother's happiness. He knew that if she were alive, she would have supported his decision. More than anything, Harry wanted to build a life that reflected her values. One where family came first, where love was prioritized over duty, and where he could raise his children free from the suffocating expectations of the monarchy. Diana's influence was not just a memory, it was the foundation upon which Harry was building his future. Building a new life in California. With the weight of the monarchy lifted from his shoulders, Harry embarked on a new chapter of his life, one far removed from the rigid traditions of the British royal family. In early 2020, he and Meghan relocated to California, seeking the freedom to live life on their own terms. This move was not just about geography, it was about redefining what happiness and success meant outside of royal obligations. California offered something Harry had never truly experienced: privacy. He could step outside without being followed by photographers. He could raise his children without the looming presence of palace expectations, and he could finally prioritize his mental well-being without fear of scrutiny. In this new life, he was no longer Prince Harry, the spare to the heir. He was simply Harry, a husband, a father, and an advocate for the causes that mattered to him. Their departure did not mean stepping away from public life entirely. Instead, Harry and Meghan used their newfound independence to champion the issues they cared about on their own terms. They launched Archwell, a foundation dedicated to mental health, humanitarian efforts, and media integrity, causes deeply personal to Harry given his experiences with the press and the pressures of royal life. Most importantly, Harry found solace in the family he had created with Meghan. Their home in Montecito became a place of warmth and security, a stark contrast to the cold, institutional environment of the palace. Their children, Archie and Lilibet, would grow up with a sense of freedom that Harry had never known as a child. They would not be bound by royal titles or the expectations that came with them. Instead, they would be raised in an environment rooted in love and authenticity. While Harry's journey had been filled with painful realizations, it had ultimately led him to a place of peace. He had broken free from the cycle that had plagued his family for generations, forging a new path that honored his mother's legacy while allowing him to be the person he was always meant to be. For the first time in his life, Harry was truly free.